You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today, we are looking at some buy low players across the NBA, guys who you might be able to acquire for a cheaper price than usual in a trade for fantasy basketball. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Indeed. The first guy on this list I want to talk about is Ja Morant, a guy that has been obviously great this year, the 68th ranked player over the course of the season. But over the last 2 weeks, he's fallen all the way outside the top 140. And why is that? 29 minutes a game only, 65% from the free throw line, only the one steal, and he has hit 1 3 in 7 games. And that has caused those numbers to tumble. Now, he's still getting 7 assists per game, which is strong, and he's shooting 51% overall from the field. That's 14% on threes, 54% on twos. But the overall volume is down, the usage is down, the rebounds are down, the steal numbers aren't great, the free throw percentage is poor, and that's causing a real impact on his overall numbers. Now, there are people who buy into the myth that is the rookie wall, and if those people have Morant on their team, that means you might be able to acquire him at a cheaper price. I think their top 50 is a realistic expectation for Morant for the rest of the season. They're not going to push him to 38 minutes a night or anything like that. That's coming next year when he's a second-round player. But he will be better than what we've seen here. The free throw shooting will be better than this. The three-point output will be better than this. This is just a bit of a slump from Morant, and maybe some of what he was doing earlier in the year in terms of the shooting wasn't realistic to continue. But I do feel pretty confident that he's going to be able to best what he's done over these last 7 games, and that's averaged just 14, 3, and 7. So he is a bit of a buy low to me, as is Toby Harris of the Philadelphia 76ers. Harris notably frustrated in the Sixers' last game against the Heat. He's the 136th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. He's playing 35 minutes a night, so it's not a minutes issue. 17 and 7, but in true Toby Harris style. And this is why I've never been, recently never been as high on him as others. There's so little else that happens. 17 points and 7 rebounds is fine, but under 3 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.5 blocks, and he's shooting 41% from the field. Now, the free throws are nice, but it's that field goal percentage which has really dropped off at the moment, and he doesn't have that buffer of good assists and high rebounds and high steals and high blocks to really keep him going through those lean times in the shooting numbers. He is the 64th ranked player this season. He was unbelievably overranked in the preseason. There were some sites that had him at 24 and 25, which was absolute nonsense. He's just going to do what Jimmy Butler did. Cool. He wasn't. He hasn't. But what we're seeing now is also a downturn. So there is some room for growth here for Harris, pretty significant growth. If that shooting gets back to 45, 46, 47 from the field, he gets back to being close to a 20-point per game guy, 7 boards, and then you get at least a little bit of something extra from those defensive numbers, which have been completely lacking. And they are the thing that really swings his ranking from 130th to 40th to 60th. It makes it all over the place, those percentages and defensive numbers from Toby Harris. A guy who is struggling at the moment, Devonte Graham. Remember there was a campaign for him to make the All-Star game about 2 months ago? That has fallen way off. He still is one of the biggest surprises in the NBA, but 128th over the last 2 weeks. And I include him on this list, not mainly, but in large part because the questions have come flooded in. Do I drop Devonte Graham? The answer to that is a clear no. But it's been rough. There's no doubt about that. Over the last 5 games, he's playing 35 minutes, but under 12 points, 35% from the field, 67% from the line on minimal attempts. Now, the thing that's keeping him above Ja Morant in this time is he's hitting 2.5 threes as opposed to 1 3 in 7 games. He's giving you 1.4 steals as well. Now, realistically, we get volume of threes, we get some scoring, and we get good assist numbers from Devonte, where we have to deal with an absolutely piss-poor, horrible field goal percentage, which we thought Terry Rozier would be an absolute chucker on this team, and he has been put to shame by what Devonte Graham's been doing to your overall field goal percentage. Still, he can be better than this. He can go back to being that top 70, top 80 guy, even with poor shooting. Like, I've got him projected to be the 67th ranked player the rest of the season, and that's while shooting under 40%, because I expect that 3-point volume to go up, because he's really down there at the moment, just 28% from three, when he's at 38 over the course of the season. And the rebounds are really low at the moment. The scoring's a little bit down. There are numerous things here that can change. And the free throw shooting especially. He's at 82 for the season and 67 over those last few games.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
I hope to God that he does take it from here, but it's been real rough for Mitch Robinson so far this season. But the news coming out today that the Knicks, they're not firing Steve Mills, they're promoting him. So the dumb shittery still continues with this team and nonsense continues. But yeah, I've been saying all along that how much or how little sense it made that they were so interested in re-signing Marcus Morris to a big long-term deal. Now, apparently the news is that Mills is out and they are open to trading him, as they should be, because he is not as good as what people think. And the fact that they try to build around an absolute shot-chucking ball stopper that is Morris is absolutely asinine. Now, Knicks still remain in a state of dysfunction, with Mills being promoted / moving on from basketball, to talk about Masai Ujiri coming in, to 5 minutes later talking about an agent coming in, and then Rich Paul tweeting a pumping biceps emoji. All that nonsense around the Knicks. Like, they just can't get out of their own way. In fact, dare I say, they can't stop tripping over their own dicks. They are so all over the place. Now, hopefully, I think there is some part of it that the front office, as absolutely inept and incompetent as they are, were having words in Mike Miller's ears. Please play Punch Bob, play Marcus Morris, play Taj Gibson. We want to recoup their trade value. We've got to showcase them, as if every other person in the NBA has never seen these players play at any point through their 5, 10-year, 8-year NBA careers. Not every front office, Knicks, is as dumb as you are. In fact, none of them are. But anyway, maybe this change, the reverse course on Marcus Morris, means that finally Mitch Robinson won't play 15 minutes when he's not in foul trouble and fully healthy, like the last game. Now, still, despite all the nonsense, he's the 89th ranked player this season in only 23 minutes a game. If that bumps up to 29, he'll be a top 50 guy. He's 100th over the last 2 weeks. He's shooting 88% from the field, 2 blocks per game. That's just usefulness there by itself. Get more minutes there. Get to 3 blocks. Get to 10 rebounds. And the usage is still absolutely asininely low. 8 usage percentage over the last 2 weeks. People are dropping Mitch Robinson. If he's dropped, you add him. But he's also a great buy low chains, because I think, and again, this is stupid and it makes no sense, but after the trade deadline, they'll free Mitch Robinson, they'll unleash him, which they should have just been playing him all season, because they're going nowhere and everybody knows who Taj Gibson is. End of New York Knicks rant. Let's move on to the next bloke, and that is Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers, who is a little bit down at the moment, 78th over the last 2 weeks. Flexing his hand. The injury risk is always there for managers who have him. And the free throw is shooting down to 71%. He's not blocking shots. The assists are down. There are a few categories where he is lacking at the moment. Just under 2 assists, only 1 block per game, and that's 71% from the line on almost 9 attempts, is dropping him way down. He's the 15th ranked player over the course of this season, and he'll be much better than this if you can get him. And there are people who panic. He's going to rest. He's going to get hurt in fantasy playoffs. And you know what? Maybe he does get hurt. But that could honestly happen for anybody. More likelihood with Embiid. But that means you can get him at a cheaper price. A top 30 guy, a top 40 guy is the sort of player that you'd be looking at. The big avocado, Andre Drummond, is another guy who's way down. He is 80th over the last 2 weeks. He is 12th over the course of the season. With the incoming trade deadline and people panicking, what happens to Drummond if he gets traded? He'll be fine. He hoovers rebounds wherever he goes. He's averaging 19 and 16 in these last 6 games, but why is he down so low? Well, he's shooting 49% from the field and 49% from the line. And we know he's improved his free throws, so that will start to improve. Those field goal percentage is low as well. He's only at 1 steal per game, which is good, but for him it's not. He's a much higher steal rate sort of a player. So there is significant room for him to get better from there, and I expect that he will. And again, it's about utilizing and leveraging the panic over the trade deadline with the big avocado to get him onto your team at a cheaper price. CJ McCollum. We know about McCollum. He is the king of the buy lows and sell highs, and now we're in the buy low phase. Over the last 4 games, he is scoring 21 points per game, but shooting a weird-ass 44% from the free throw line. He's giving you 4 rebounds and 4 assists, which is about in line with what he normally does. The usage is a little bit down at only 25% and 45% only from the field. But he'll have a stretch where he shoots 50% from the field. And then when someone looks at him as, hey, is CJ back to being a top 30 guy, you laugh to yourself and you say no. But then you trade him for a guy of equivalent value. And now when he's down this low, when he's whatever he's doing here to your free throws and hurting your field goals and lacking in the steals category, which he always does, then you can get him at that cheaper price. He's 59th over the course of the season, but it's big swings and roundabouts. It's 150, then it's 20, then it's 110, then it's 30, and that's how his rankings tend to go. So he is the ultimate stock market type of player. Next up, we look at Big Al Horford. A lot of sixes on this list. And that's because they've been absolutely shitful of late. Horford's the 122nd ranked player over the last 2 weeks. And yes, Embiid back has an impact, but it doesn't mean that he should shoot 40% from the field. It doesn't mean that he should block exactly 0 shots in his last 5 games. All those things should be able to improve. He's also hitting just 31% of his threes. So while, yes, Embiid impacts his usage, it probably drops his rebounds down, and it probably does have an impact on his blocks playing out of position. It doesn't mean that you block 0 shots in the last 5 games. That's Evan Fournier's game. Horford is better than this. He's 81st over the course of the season. You should be looking at him as an 80 to 100 sort of a player, I would guess. And that is what I'd be looking at. But he's outside that range at the moment. People have considered dropping him. He's only 92% rostered in Yahoo. So, again, indications that people are souring. And they will use the Embiid impact, which is real, on him to say that's why he's this bad. But that doesn't mean he blocks 0 shots or shoots 40% from the field. Those things should be able to improve. Last guy on my list today is DeJounte Murray. This is not an exhaustive list. If you have other buy lows, drop them in the comments down below. DeJounte, 132nd over the last 2 weeks. Somehow rostered in just 76% of Yahoo leagues. This is the 84th ranked player over the course of the season. If your league is that wild that you've got a top 100 guy sitting on the waiver wire, which apparently 24% of leagues do, then I don't know what the hell's going on there. Yes, it's frustrating the minutes. Yes, his production can be a real pain in the ass. We know that. He is not a high scorer, and so much of me looking through roster percentages makes me look at guys like Patrick Beverley, Marcus Smart, DeJounte Murray, guys who score under 10 points per game. People do not give a shit about them in fantasy, and they ignore the impact of almost 1.6 steals, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, whatever else they do. They ignore it because they don't score double digits. That's why punting points in a league can be really useful, because people don't pay attention to those guys who are useful in those other categories. As for DeJounte, he's not going to be a 30-minute-a-night guy. I think we're all well aware of that with the way that the Spurs are running their rotations. But even in his current minutes, he can be much better than he is now. Just 43% shooting over this time, only 2 assists. Those numbers can both increase. He's only averaging 8.7 points in the last 7 games. That can increase as well. So a bit of a buy low there for DeJounte Murray. That'll do it for my Buy Low podcast, guys. I'll be back later on to recap all of Tuesday's games and preview Wednesday's action across the NBA. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Hit me down below in the comments. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.